Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Oh, I can hear the
Hello.
stream. Let me.
You still you still
Hello.
have it up in the
I
background?
still have it open. Let me mute that
I
so
did
people
the
can.
same shit.
You did? Okay. I don't feel as bad anymore. But I'm new to this. Sorry. Um, Welcome, everyone. Today we are going to be reviewing all of the VGC teams for the. Is it Phalanx division?
Phalanx.
Phalanx. Got you. I should probably know the name of the division. The Phalanx division, and we're going to, yeah, just give a rundown. I'm more of a VGC guy than Spam is, but he still has a lot to add. Don't worry.
I'm here for moral support.
Yeah, and tech support because he knows what he's doing with streaming and I don't. But I know what I'm doing with spreadsheets somewhat, so balances out.
Balances out.
Yep. All right. I think we can get right into it.
I think so.
Starting off hot with the Las Vegas Marauders, which it's got to be the best team in the whole draft. I mean, I'm not biased at all when I say that. Um, I mean, it is already ranked number one. It's not like I had the first overall pick or anything. But I think Rhydon is the best mon in the whole draft. Honestly, I don't think there's. I think Calyrex Ice is the only real other contender for potential best mon in the format. You could say Shadow or Zamazenta, but I don't think they're quite the same tier, just in my opinion. Um, so I was so lucky to be able to get this team that I got. I got ridiculously lucky. Grimstarl and Urshifu, these are mons that should not be on the same team in draft. Like, especially with the first overall pick. Like the fact that they fell to the 29th, or 28th and 29th overall pick is disgusting, honestly.
That is
Um,
wild.
but I think this core alone is pretty ridiculous. Think that Iron Treads is a great addition to pair with Miraidon because the typing is really nice. A ground type and a steel type. Very good into fairy types, opposing electric types, steel types. A lot of ground is like literally the best, or probably the best offensive typing in the game. And on top of that, having steel to go with it is nice. And it gets that not photosynthesis, Quark Drive boost because of Miraidon. Very good mon. Sneasler pairs well with Miraidon too because of its unburdened ability. Sceptile too. So Electric Seed works really well.
That is really nice tech.
Yeah, you're very fast. I mean, you're the fastest thing in the world. Next to Miraidon. Um, gouging.
Reggie Alecki would like a word with you.
No, it's faster than Regieleki. I mean, max speed Regieleki has nothing on
Toy
Sneasler or
Scarf
Sceptile.
Reggie Alecki would like a word with you.
Even Choice Scarf. I think if I run max speed, I outspeed Choice Scarf. I don't know the
That's
calcs on
wild.
that off the top of my head, but I don't see a world in which this is a crazy thing to say, but I don't see a world in which Regieleki outspeeds me. Um,
Hot take.
yeah, I mean, I generally don't. Gouging Fire is photosynthesis, not Quark Drive, but it's a fire type, which is nice. Um, I thought it was like a really good tier three, and the fact that it was available in the start of the sixth round or one two um yeah 1 2 3 4 5 yeah sorry so the sixth round was surprising to me and I think it's a really good mon. Try the seventh round maybe. Sorry, I'm stupid. But anyways, great mon. Volbeat is very underrated. I think Tailwind's nice. It gets the weathers, which is nice if I'm fighting the opposing weathers. It gets taunt. It gets a lot of little tech. Charm, I think. That's good. Sceptile is kind of similar to Sneasel in the sense it's really fast. But a lot of good attackers on this team. Enamorous is a great tier 5, I think, as well. A lot of offensive threats my opponent has to watch out for. And the nice thing is it's mainly physical, right? You look at like Grimmsnarl, Urshifu, Treads, Sneasler, Gouging Fire, Iron Boulder, and Amherst. That's like 7 mods out of my whole team that are physical, which is a huge problem. You're gonna want to run physical defense. But then Miraidon is, if you run physical defense, then you're weaker to Miraidon, who is obviously a huge special threat. Sceptile potentially too. Um, and you can run mixed attacker sets on things like Treads, even though it's not a great special attacking stat. You can, just because of its ability. An Amherst can run mixed attacker easily and is usually a special attacker, but if it didn't have superpower, it would be almost entirely a special attacker. Sceptile's a good special attacker. So it puts my opponent in a tough situation where they want to run physical defense and they realistically are more likely to run physical defense than special defense. But then you're weaker to my Miraidon, and Miraidon is a huge threat. You can't. It's not one of those things that you can take out as easily as you think. Calyrex Shadow Rider's the same way. You feel like, oh, just Sucker Punch it. But then you have their Terra, obviously. Even things like Terra Fairy Rhydon, which normally would like you would think would like wall it. Like I can run a different Terra type with Terra Blast, like to just hit any coverage that I'm concerned about. And I have a whole team with me. It's not like I can't use these guys. If he runs Terra Fairy Rhydon, something like that, I can run Iron Treads with just any Steel type move into it. And that way, if he Terras or isn't Terra, he's weak to it. So there's just a lot of ways that, especially with my partners and the team that I do have, that I can make Miraidon a huge threat. I think it's a real contender for MVP this season. I know it's very early to say that, but I think it could be a really good one. And I have the utmost
It's
faith
just
in it.
so stupid oppressive. Like
Its stats are ridiculous. The bulk is
stats are
naturally
ridiculous.
insane. If you run specs on it, it just echoes everything in the world. Um, it's really not fun to play against. Um, so yeah. Then let's move over to Screwbite's team. Sorry, that's enough yapping about my team.
Do we want to cover weaknesses on your team?
What weaknesses? I'm kidding. So
Okay.
ground typing is a problem for the team generally. That's kind of why I went with Sceptile and Enamorous for those last two picks. Um, as much as it is a problem, I do have Urshifu, who doesn't ground types are a bit afraid of. I think the biggest thing is like if I have Pokemon with ground type coverage into me, that could be a problem, I guess. I think it's a nice team in the sense it kind of covers its own weaknesses, like in the sense of like it has ground weaknesses, but there's something like Urshifu, or like it's mainly physical, but then there's something like Miraidon. So like it makes you want to prepare for it in a certain way, and then it can punish that, or it has the ability to. Not saying it will, but it has the ability to punish that preparation. So I think another weakness is I do have two support mons, Grimmsnarl and Svolbeat, and they are both Prankster mons. I did think a lot about my opponent having Psychic Terrain, Frigoraph as well, and like mons like Frigoraph, like Bruxish too. I thought about that, and I think that Psychic Terrain is much easier for me to deal with than something like Frigoraph, but Frigoraph doesn't have redirection, and neither does Serena or Bruxish or any of those guys. So it makes my life easier. And considering I only have two fake out guys, it's not like fake out's a huge part of my game plan. It's definitely a possibility. But the main weakness would probably be against those kind of teams or against any team with like a redirection could be a problem for this team. If you have like something like Amoonguss with Rocky Helmet, Urshifu doesn't like fighting that. Miraidon doesn't like fighting that. I would be forced to use something like Gouging Fire to get it off the field, or have Miraidon just exist and to keep that electric terrain up so that he can't put me to sleep. If it spams Rage Powder, though, that's annoying, and his partner can kind of be a problem for me. So I think redirection is a big problem for me. And again, those priority blocking moves can be a pain. Trick Room teams also, potentially, because I don't have a way of imprisoning Trick Room. I do have a lot of power. So even if I'm not running speed, if I'm fighting a team that's like a hard Trick Room team, right, I probably don't need to invest too much speed. And I'm probably running max attack on almost everything that that set. So I'll be able to kind of overpower my opponent. Hopefully, but if they're able to get Trick Room up, no problem, and they have lots of really strong Trick Room attackers, then I am in trouble. Because
Yeah.
the bulk on the team is nice. Like Grimmsnarl has screens, and the natural bulk is pretty nice. But if you're a super strong attacker, you're a Cali Rex Ice kind of guy, and you are in Trick Room, and let's say you're at +1 or +2 or something, then you're a problem for my team, and that's just a fact. So that's definitely so. If a team starts snowballing, like a Calyrex is able to take out something that's weak to it. If I had like I don't know an Amorous and he Oko's an Amorous, then he's at +1 for the rest of the game until he switches. Grimmsnarl can like parting it, but again, if you have like a priority blocker, then I can't. So there's a few teams that can maybe cause me more problems. But yeah, those are just I don't want to talk too much about my team.
Mhm.
Talked a lot about it. More because it's my team. But yeah. Anyways, moving on to Screwbite's team. He he has a very interesting team. I think there's a lot of directions you can go with this in prep. So it's not gonna be fun to face. Just in short. Our Caledon's already top 10 in MVP. Again, definitely not because it's alphabetical right now. But I think
Yeah, because you haven't uploaded any of the stats yet, have you?
no, I'm not. I haven't looked at any stats yet. I will after this stream, but I don't. I didn't want it to be part of kind of my initial thoughts of the team. So I haven't watched any of the replays yet.
That's valid.
Incineroar is I mean, he's probably the best mono Pokemon. Um, Especially in a restricted format. He just gets better the more powerful Pokemon are, which is crazy to say, but his fake out parting shot combo is brutal. He has good coverage, including knockoff, which is huge because it's stab too. So that does hit really hard on that first attack and into things that are psychic types, which is a lot of legendaries. Psychic and dragon are like I think by far the two most popular legendary typings. So he's good into a lot of guys like that. And he can run Flare Blitz, but he doesn't need to. Most of the time, he doesn't actually run Flare Blitz, which is nice when you are a rain team like he pretty clearly is.
Yeah.
He has to swing Lilligant for opposing Sun teams, and I do respect that. I think Electabuzz is a really, really necessary redirection because
Really good redirection. It's also and you
Sinistcha
can
too.
you can thunder spam.
Yeah. The
He's
thing
a rain team.
the reason I think Electabuzz is probably like he plays a different role than Sinistcha. Sinistcha is great at like keeping its partners alive and being a disruptor. Like you need to attack me. Because especially with like Terra Fairy or something, you can use Iron Defense on it even. It's a problem. You have to kill it. Like Terra Steel or Terra Fairy is it just can exist. And you wanna get it off the field as quickly as possible. Um,
And I think also having Sinistra on the team as well, you just have so much support for your ally on the battlefield between Electabuzz and Sinistra being able to
yeah.
heal them. And yeah, it's pretty nice.
Um, I think those guys are good. Politoed is no Kyogre, and not even a Pelipper in terms of abilities, but it gets some unique tech. It gets Parasol, which is cool. Because not many mods get that. Um, Politoed and Kingdra is a cool combo. Politoed is slower than any other Trick Room or any other Drizzlemon, the other two. Um, so besides maybe Wingull, I guess, but he's slower, so works
Wingle
kind of
OP.
better with Trick Room, which Sinistra does have. He does have Trick Room, so you can if you punish your opponent if they go for Tailwind. Um, Speaking of Tailwind, he does have Gliscor, who and Iron Yugulus. Iron Yugulus is much better than Gliscor at setting
It's
up
also
Tailwind, but
it's also
Gliscor's
nice
exists, so
against
not bad.
other weather teams because you're slower, so your weather will go into effect after the other weather is set.
Unless you're fighting a Torkoal, but otherwise, like Groudon
Right.
is fat. Even Groudon's faster. Um, so I think you're otherwise pretty much always setting him up after, which is nice. On Regulus, I actually really like. I think he was by far the in my eyes the worst. Not sorry, the most underrated. How do I word this? He was the mon that I had the biggest flip in opinion on. I thought he was terrible. for a long time, and now I think he's really good. I don't know what made me doubt him so much. I just thought he kind of wasn't a great fit on these rain teams, but I think he actually is. He's a great fit. Dark typing is really nice, especially against opposing prankster mons, because prankster weather can be annoying if you're any weather team. Um, but you can shut down at least part of that. You can't shut down the prankster weather, but you can shut down the prankster moves on you. They can't thunderwave you. They can't encore you into whatever. Like tailwind, you can't encore you into tailwind. That's kind of nice. And having tailwind of your own when you're pretty fast and can get run booster energy to be extremely fast, then it's a good fit. Zacian, I think, is a great restricted. It was nerfed pretty heavily in terms of its attack stat, but it's still like 160, or it's still ridiculous. I forget what it is. It was like 180 or something, and now it's like 160. But
I can pull it up.
I don't know. Yeah. But it's really good. Steel Fairy's a great typing. Just because of your coverage and your defense is really nice. Defensive coverage. Kingdra's a good sweeper. And Rain, obviously. Archaludon was a great one in Reg H. He still has a lot of potential now, especially with like sturdy sets. Power Herb sturdy sets are pretty common. Or like max speed. With Power Herb to use that Electro Shot. Outside of Rain. And maybe he gets Meteor Beam. I don't think so. Maybe. But either way, he has a lot of power. You can beef him up if you use something like Beat Up into him. A bit is less common in this format. So I think the main problem of this team is just it's gonna be annoying to fight.
Yeah, it's
Like,
really versatile.
um, I
And it's
think
very well focused too. It has a game plan and it's gonna stick to it, but it also has a lot of counterplay involved.
yeah, I think I think it's going to be not an easy matchup for anyone really, but some moving on to weaknesses, I think looks like ground. Like it does have two flying types, obviously, but one, two, three, four ground weaknesses, and they're all pretty important Pokemon, especially Incin and Zacian, and Archaludon. Um, so it's not great. But two flying types makes up for that a little. I think the this team would have been much better in Reg H in the sense of like Kingdra, Politoed, Electabuzz, and Archaludon. We're all and Sinistcha actually. We're all much better in Reg H. But with restricted, it's harder to deal with. The nice thing is that you are in a format where there's only one of every restricted. So if you have a problem matchup, you're only gonna have to fight them once, and you might not even have to
Well,
fight them. So
like a
that's
like a
some
Turnham
extra
just
nice.
brought up, Zacian does not like Intimidate, but
But you have an
he
Incineroar, so you're never
he,
fighting it.
he has Incineroar exactly.
So that's that is very nice. He is probably the best intimidate user, or definitely the best intimidate user. Sorry. But I think there are a lot of ways in which you can use the mons on this team to your advantage. I think yeah, it's just gonna be a problem to fight. You don't know exactly who you're fighting, and those are the most annoying teams. If like with my team, you generally know Miraidon's coming every time, Ghost coming every time, Urshifu's coming every time. Like at least those guys are coming every time. With this team, Kingdra could come, or Caledon can come as range sweepers. Electabuzz can come instead of Sinistcha or with Sinistcha to be problems. And Incineroar's probably coming every time, but like he's probably the only him and Zacian are probably the only two guarantees of like they're coming every time. So it's it's a lot of mind games and not fun. So um moving on from these two teams, let's scroll down to here and let me read chat actually. Sorry, wasn't really doing that. Yeah, I was mentioning your Calyrex. I think your Calyrex's team is not. We're about to talk about it, but I think it's a scary team. Um, sorry, that was a void. Unburdened Caesar's not close to Choice Scarf Regieleki. Well, I don't think there's ever a max speed Regieleki. I don't think I've ever seen one. I think they only run max they run like max special attack or something, max attack.
Challenge
Um,
accepted.
well, I mean, you obviously can if you're fighting something like my team. You're probably going to want to run it. But let's see, if they're 252 EVs, that's 378, and then unburden max is 378 as well. So there's actually a speed tie. Max speed Sneasler with unburden is speed tie with 252 EV Regilucky. So if you run max speed, you're gonna be fine. But that's just a comparison of how fast it is. And again, this is Regilucky we're talking about. 200 base speed when the next fastest mon in the format is 150 base speed. So basically, you're outspeeding everything. Um, yeah, it's a good mon. Anyways, moving on to Void's team, honestly, I think this team has a lot of potential. Even though there's a lot of mons that seem pretty questionable, in my opinion, Goldengo in this format is significantly worse. Mudsdale feels like he could just kind of sit on the bench the whole season. Scrafty feels like he's a maybe. Hatterene feels like a good trick room sweeper that's not good in this format. Um, Palkia feels like a maybe questionable choice for second restricted. But the closer you look at this team, or the more you see the potential of this team, I think it's actually really nice. You have Calyrex and Hatterene, like they can both set up Trick Room, so it's not like you only relying on Calyrex Ice. I think that's big. Um, Another huge part of this team is Ogerpon. Ogerpon having that redirection is huge, so that you can set up Trick Room easily. And because this team is more focused on Trick Room, pretty heavily focused on Trick Room, I think that's huge. You need it. You need a follow me user, especially a grass type, so you can't be slept, and you can redirect those like spores. Actually, he, yeah, you can because it's not a rage powder. Sorry, you can redirect to those spores, which is nice. You can keep your Kali safe. If there are any like Will-O-Wisps too, Will-O-Wisp can be a killer for Calyrex Ice. Um, in this way, you don't have to run Lumberry typically. I mean, you can run it on Ogerpon instead, who doesn't like being burned certainly, but it's way better than Calyrex being burned. And any parting shots or anything like you basically keep Calyrex safe with Ogerpon. So Ogerpon is going to be the cornerstone of this team. Um, get it? Pays Ogerpon cornerstone. Yeah, I know.
Shut
That
up.
was a good one. So Iron Hands is also great. I think there's so many things you can do with him. You can run Belly Drum. You can run Swords Dance with Drain Punch to like heal himself back up. You can not do any of that and run AV. You can run Fake Out. You can run like so many things with this guy that he's a problem. Again, in prep, he's one of those mons that you just don't like fighting because you don't know what he's gonna bring, what side he's gonna bring. Um, Goldengo, I will admit, probably not the best mon in this format just because of how much competition there is for him now when there used to not be. But there's also a handful of mons. I think Palkia is probably again not a great like mon in this format, but maybe Cinderace too. But Talonflame is the key for helping those mons be viable in this team because having a pretty much prankster Tailwind in the sense of if you're at full HP, so as long as you're not fake outed, which you can run Terragos if you want or Covert Cloak or whatever, then you have priority on your Tailwind, and you're also a very fast mod. I think it's like 119 base speed or something like that. So you get up Tailwind pretty quickly, and you're able to have your guys outspeed, and even if they're not as bulky as they used to be, like Goldengo's not nearly as bulky as he used to be in previous formats, he can still hit really hard. Palkia does have good natural bulk and good offenses, so he can, if he outspeeds everything, then he can do a lot of damage and cause a lot of problems. He can do like 70% consistently to opponents, which is not
That's
something
pretty
you'd
good.
want if you're the
No.
opponent. Cinderace, I actually really like on this team because how I was talking about setting up screens to help with bulk against Trick Room teams, you can use Court Change on Cinderace and swap the screens. So if you're fighting someone like me or someone who has a very dedicated screen setter, someone like Lefkey, like someone who like always sets up screens pretty much, you can just flip that matchup completely on their head. And even if you don't bring Cinderace in the back at all, if you just have Cinderace in team preview, it's gonna make me way more hesitant to set up my own screens. or it's gonna force me to run Brick Break to break my own screens if you do switch them, or makes me want to take out Cinderace as a threat, which it normally would not be a priority to take out, but that's kind of part of the problem with something like Cinderace. I like it a lot. Scrafty, I do think, again, a dark type with stab knockoff is nice to have always. Gets fake out too, so we have two decent fake out users on this team. Not none of them are pretty fast, but that's okay. Because Scrafty also gets something like coaching. It's not as slow as a lot of Mons like Cali Ice and Iron Hands are at that nice base 50 speed, which you see Ursaluna at too, pretty notably. But there aren't too many other Mons that tie at 50 speed. They're important Mons, but you have two of those important Mons. So there really aren't that many actual like threats that speed tie with you. And you can always run something like Iron Ball if you want to just be slower. Or room service. But Scrafty doesn't have to worry about that speed tie too much. Like or being undersped in Trick Room. He doesn't have to worry about that too much. So I think he's a good option too. Mudsdale, you kind of need to set him up with stamina with a beat up or something to make him bulkier. If not, his bulks does struggle a little, but he is very strong, so he can hit really hard, and he's like 36 base speed or something, so he's pretty slow too. Hatterene's like 29 base speed, so with E Force too, if you're able to do that, that's nice. If your opponent has the train or if you set up the train yourself. So I think this team is definitely scarier than it looks. I don't think this team, honestly, I don't think this team looks crazy scary, but I think it is pretty scary. Um, so I don't want to fight this team, especially I don't want to fight it, like just because of my team. But I wouldn't want to fight it no matter who I was. And the problem with this format is that every team is this way. I don't think there's any team that I want to fight as like, oh, this is gonna be my easy matchup. I think even if coaches are not familiar with the team or can't use them super well, that's okay because the teams themselves are very scary still. So that's something to keep in mind. To not go easy on your opponent or like to not ever assume a match is free because I don't think there's any easy matchups here. And that's showcased perfectly with It's Just Me's team, which, oh my god, is this scary. Just because there's a lot of options here. I think that Whimsicott, which SNB very kindly dropped for It's Just Me, very, very kindly, pairs well with this team, as well as Sableye. So you have two really scary Prankster Mons. One can help set up Sun for you, and actually Sableye might have Sunny Day too. But Whimsicott has Sunny Day, I know for a fact. And can uh, set up your Tailwind, notably. Meaning if you're running something like Hisuian Arcanine or Executor or Venusaur, or Chiyu even. These are mons that would normally not outspeed anything. But Executor and Venusaur with Chlorophyll and with a little boost from Tailwind, you can outspeed a lot of things, which is huge. Especially something like Hisuian Arcanine or Chiyu that just hits like a tank. Like they hit
Just say
ridiculously hard.
Chi is gross, especially
Chiyu
with
in Sun, I mean, ridiculous
yeah,
damage.
and
I
Tailwind being able to outspeed. Yeah, that's
mhm.
gross.
um Plus, I do think Chiyu Snarl is really annoying to fight.
Oh
Because
yeah.
typically, um, if you're going to run well, first of all, it's just an annoying mon to fight in general. But Snarl just makes your opponent's offensive weaker. And if you have Sableye who can set up screens and make your team a little bulkier, and Chiyu is making you weaker, then it's a problem. And especially if Hisuian Arcanine does run Intimidate, likes to Intimidate cycle you, you're just not having much fun that game. Groudon
I
and
do
Sable.
think
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I will say one thing about having Chiyu on this team is he doesn't have very many other special attackers to help deal with the break and special defense. Like the only other things that can really
Yeah,
do it, like Cresselia can the Cresselia benefits
Executor.
from it a little bit, Executor, Whimsicott, and Venusaur. Which I guess that's enough. That could definitely be enough, but I feel like none of
But
those besides
they're all mainly
Venusaur.
support mons.
Right, exactly.
I think Executor is maybe Venusaur too are like your best special attackers outside of Chiyu, which is not great. I think if you had a significantly more threatening mon, special attacker, sorry, like if you had Flutterman on this team, which is unrealistic
Gross.
because of the team that you have, um, but it would be really nice. Actually, you wouldn't be allowed to have Flutterman and these three mons. Um, but if you were to have something like Fluttermane that benefits from photosynthesis and is a special attacker, your team would be ridiculous. I think Clefairy is really nice. Having that redirection that's a
Good
little bit
redirection, yeah.
bulkier. With the Eviolite, especially, is really nice to have. Sableye pairs really, really well with Groudon, running Gravity especially, which makes Groudon's signature move Precious Blades, which is 85% accurate, which is brutal. 85% accuracy is not ideal. You're going to click it still because 120 base power hits both targets, and it's not Earthquake because it doesn't hit your partner, and it's stronger than Earthquake, so you're going to click it still. But Sableye makes it 100% accurate, like 130% accurate or something crazy. So it always hits, and Gravity makes flying types and Mons with Levitate be hit by ground type moves. So
I
Groudon's even stronger.
Precipice Blades does even better.
Yeah. So Groudon's a real threat actually, and especially if you're running like something like Clear Amulet Groudon, so you can't even be weakened on the physical side,
Yep.
or you're able to get out a lot more damage. Heat Crash on Groudon is a problem, um, especially with Groudon on a team that can run Trick Room with Oranguru and especially Cresselia. But like to set up that Trick Room for you, or with
Oranguru
Tailwind.
also has a nice bit of tech to him as well. Like
Oranguru Instruct. I thought this was like probably the tier 5 seal of the draft, or one of them. That Cinderace was a great tier 5 as well, but Oranguru is one of the best. I was very surprised because he wasn't even drafted. I think he was picked up in free agency,
free agency.
but
Nice.
he's great. I had him. Um, did I have him season 1? I think I did.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
he ran him season 1.
But he's just really good. Instruct is way too good. If you're able to pull it off. So I think there are definitely weaknesses to this team in the sense of your speed control is iffy.
There's a lot of psychic types.
There are, um, well, there's
Granted,
there's three.
and doubles you don't necessarily. Yeah, but that's a
That's more
fair
than
dinkum amount.
yeah. Um, I think a problem we already talked about special attackers, but your just offense in general can be lackluster at times. Groudon and Chi are your biggest threats. Hisuian Arcanine is kind of conditional, or these three guys here, Hisuian Arcanine, Venusaur, and Executor, are all conditional threats in the sense of if you get them at the right speed, like if you have them in Sun or in Tailwind, then they're big threats. If not, then they could be just sitting ducks. Like they could, you might have to you might be forced to Terra them just to live, so you can get off an attack. Um, and they're not. I think they are all very good mons still, or good budget mons especially, but they're harder to pull off. I guess is what the word I'm looking for.
You have to have that weather/tailwind consistency.
Yeah. It's a little bit harder. Um, I think that there are some teams that I got. You have two prankster mons as your two best support mons. Um, and so that's something to remember if like you're fighting something like Frigoraph, that or something like Indeedee that blocks psychic terrain or that blocks priority moves. That's annoying for you. Not impossible again, but it's annoying. Um, I think something that could be a problem is something like Indeedee Male with Imprison. If you have an Imprison team with expanding force, which Executor likes running,
That's gross.
or and Oranger sometimes too can run expanding force. And it you can block protect with that or in trick room with that. It just you lose out on some support. So that can be annoying. Um, I think it's a good team, but it also can be overpowered. Like if you have so like if you're able to get up the weather you want, right? Like Whimsicott can change the weather, but if you have another prankster, like let's say your opponent has a prankster weathermon, that's slower than Whimsicott, then you're able to kind of, or if in any way you're able to control the weather and get up like a rain against this team, they're not happy. Like especially something like Urshifu and Rain against this team does pretty well. Um, he's a fighting type with the psychics, but like there's always something like Terra Dark. So there's there are probably a lot of mons that could to tear through this team if they're set up right. Additionally, other Sun teams, I feel like if you have something like Fluttermane, could do put in work against this team. Maybe not him specifically. There are other mons that could take advantage of Sun, like Photosynthesis mons could do well against this team. Um, but yeah, I think it's a good team overall. The biggest issue is just not having. It feels like this team is slightly directionless in the sense of you have a lot of support mons and your damage is kind of on the back burner for the most part. And so it can be hard to just take out your opponent's Pokemon. So if there's a Pokemon that's snowballing or that's causing you a real problem, it can be hard to get rid of it. And you typically, especially in restricted formats, if you're fighting something like Cali Ice or something like Terapagos that is able to set up against you, and they're able to become more powerful, and you're not able to take it out, you can try and weaken it. But if they have, again, like a follow me user, if they have something to kind of deal with your attacks against it, um, and you're not able to weaken it, just actually killing it is the problem, especially if it terras.
Yeah.
So that's
Uh,
probably the damage
Really
output's
quick,
doing.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but my headset is going to die and I cannot use it and charge it at the same time, so I'm gonna have to skedaddle.
Oh, right now?
Yeah,
Oh, it's okay.
it started beeping at me.
You can always
I thought
come
I
back
charged
when
it
you.
earlier, but apparently, yeah, I'll come. Yeah, I'll let it charge up a little bit, and then I'll be back in just a little bit, hopefully.
We've been streaming for 40 minutes and we're 4 teams in, but I did talk a long time about my team. So
That's not bad.
come back whenever. I don't know how much longer I'll be
I
streaming,
will
but
do
yeah.
that.
Cool.
Well, until then, folks, later. I'll be back in a little bit.
All right. See you, man. All right. Moving on to. I was mainly talking to myself, anyways. I just do that. I talk a lot. Um, let's look at the next two teams. I think this team is the by far the most interesting team in the draft, the Cleveland Cinderaces. Um, he told me that he was going entirely for Oko moves as his entire strategy. So we'll see how that works. I think you can pretty clearly look at most of the mons and see what they're running of like sheer cold down here or like up there. Actually, most of these guys are running sheer cold. But you have some fissure users like Tinglu and Garganackle. A lot of bulky guys like Dundos is pretty bulky. Tinglu's extremely bulky. Dusclops with Evioli is bulky. Garganackle is extremely bulky. Um, Abomasnow can set up AV, so it feels like most of the strategy of this team is actually built around those really annoying Oko moves. Oko moves generally, you can block with something like Sturdy or even Focus Ash. You can also beat them by just having the miss. They're 30% accurate. So if your opponent gets unlucky, then you're in a lot more problem. You're in a lot more trouble. Additionally, you can set up a little easily against this turn, against this kind of team. Um, there are things like Metagross with Explosion next to Dusclops, but once you click Explosion once, you can't click it again, because you're dead. So that's something to keep in mind. I think if he does plan on using this team legitimately, and not on as a troll team or not as a not as a Oko team, I think there is potential. Kieran Black and Kyogre is a pretty good duo. Actually, I think Kieran Black's pretty good. And Kyogre's a good weather user. I think that sorry, Garganacl can be a problem if you can get up Trick Room, which is pretty hard to do on this team, just because you don't have any redirection. Um, but if you can get it up with Dusclops, if your opponent kind of doesn't go for Dusclops, or I guess Metagross might get. I'm pretty sure it gets Trick Room too. You can set up Trick Room, and then you outspeed everything. Just because of how slow your team is overall. Like Garganacl's extremely slow. So is Dondozo, Dusclops. Dusclops is like ridiculously slow. Um, so you can run ally switch shenanigans with Dusclops. I'm pretty sure, unless they took that move away from it. But I love doing that back in Gen 8. Um, there's a lot of annoying things about this team, and that's mainly the thing that you're going to think while you're fighting this team. Man, this seems annoying. Um, like you want to use electric type moves against Articuno and Suicune and Dondozo and Kyogre, but then there's things like Tinglu, which is mean to it, and Abomasnow, which resists it, and Kieran Black, which resists it. So you see stuff like that, like rock type moves are actually pretty good here, because they're good in Kieran Black and Abomasnow and Articuno, but then Rock is weak to like Metagross and all the water types. So again, the type spread is not great, but there's ways for this team to stay alive and to defend itself and to just keep being annoying. So I think it's not going to be a fun matchup, especially for me because I'm literally the first person fighting it. I'm going to see how it goes. Um, I think it's very much a team built for Okamoves. I don't know if he's going to do that. I'm gonna assume that's part of a strategy, but I'm gonna assume that's his only strategy. I think he's going to still go for like genuine strategies against me, so I'll be prepared for that too. I think it has limited potential, but that doesn't mean it can't be a threat. And if you prepare for this team wrong, or if you don't prepare for it correctly, or like if you don't prepare for it enough, sorry, it's gonna be really annoying to take out, annoying to beat. So it's not, even though it's a unique team to say the least, it's not an easy matchup. I mean, if you just let him sit there long enough, then he'll beat you with Oko moves. You can't just sit up in front of it forever. Another way to lose this team is if you just get unlucky. I mean, if he just hits those 30% accurate moves consistently, which is hard to do because it's unlucky or unlikely. But if he does it, then you're in trouble. The pitfalls of this team are, again, being outsped by a lot. Not having a clear strategy other than Oko moves. Like you can have Dondozo and Rain, or Articuno and Snow, or Metagross next to Dusclops. Those are like good pairs, and that's kind of it. Kieran Black is really strong, but who's his partner? Like Kyogre? That's kind of it. A lot of lack of like real threats outside of Oko moves. They can do decent damage, but it feels like a stall team in doubles, kind of. So, um, I think I'm very curious to see how this team does. I think it can definitely win some matches. Um, I could probably see it going around 3-5, 4-4. I haven't made any predictions for like other teams' records before this team, but that's just my guess. I can see it probably going around middle of a pack. I can't really see it like. I guess I could see it losing consistently if it just misses Oko moves, or if it tries to go for something else and just the lack of cohesion means it gets beat. Um, so I'm curious to see how this turns out. But yeah, let's move on to Lansing Ludicolo. I think if we're talking about interesting teams besides Cinderace, the Cinderaces, I think Lansing Ludicolo is definitely one of them. Terapagos is very, very threatening. It was severely underrated for a long time, and now it's kind of shown how good it is. You pair it with something like a Mungus, and that's really, really annoying because it's able to set up pretty easily. A Mungus can sleep you so that it's able to set up more. It's just like setting up generally. Even when it can't set up, it can still release powerful Terra Star Storms, especially when you Terra Stellar it. It's not a fun mon to fight, per se. But it's beatable for sure. The problem is when you try and use the fighting moves into it and it switches into something like Gladios or Meowstic Mail or Bastion Legion, who's immune to it, or Tornadus, or Pelipper, or Amoonguss. And everyone I just listed resists fighting, or besides Bastion Legion, who's immune to fighting. So that's just one weakness, and you can run something other than that, or you can redirect with something like Amoonguss, but it's just you can't get reliable damage onto it unless you use spread moves, which are less reliable, pretty clearly. And something like Calyrex Shadow can hit its partner pretty hard, but not hit it as hard. So it's annoying to take out. Palkia Origin I think is a pretty good pick with this team just because it's a semi-rain team. You do have Pelipper and somewhat Tornadus Therian to set up that rain and tailwind for you. Ludicolo is probably just a mascot pick, but could be a Swift Swim Sweeper. Maybe. I mean, I don't ever see a world in which Ludicolo is a real sweeper, but maybe if you give like Specs, Giga Drain, it could like, or Hydro Pump, it could do something. I do like Bastion Legion a lot. I think its physical option is huge. It does have some use as a special attacker as well, for sure. But I think the Vash Specs just does so much damage. That's annoying. Meowstic I like as a support option a lot. I think it's outshined by a lot of things as well, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I think there's a lot of use for it, and I think that it can be a real problem. Prankster's nice to have, and Prankster screens, especially Encore, Disable, Thunderwave. I don't remember what else it gets off the top of my head, but it's like a Klefki kind of Mon. It's annoying, generally, and it can also set up rain for you, I believe. So that's nice. There are things like Tinkaton and Latios on this team that feel a little out of place, but they're both decent Mons, so I think they could work with the team pretty well. I'm also very curious to see how this team does, just because it feels like unusual Mons, especially for this format. Like Trapagos and Amoonguss, you'll see all the time. But Palkia Origin, you almost never see. I get it was just another restricted pick, and it's a good restricted Mon still, just not a typical Mon of the format. You have things like Pelipper who are outshined by Kyogre, but there's still options, right? They still do exist. You do sometimes see Pelippers. If you don't want to run Kyogre, or if you want a second rain user, or in this case, if you can't have Kyogre, Bastion Legion, it just feels like it's kind of was better in weaker formats, but it's still very strong, and so it's still a serious threat with adaptability or Swift Swim. It can be a problem. And then you have like everyone else on this team is just kind of unusual. But again, just because it's unusual doesn't mean it's a bad team. So I think I'm looking forward to see how this team does. It's probably going to be a mixed bag of like wins and losses. I don't expect this team to do like thrive in the sense of like being a top team just because it's a hard team to pilot. When you have so many unusual mons, if you look at something like my team, I don't want to like I'm kind of being self-deprecating here in the sense of my team is easy to pilot. Like it's not. I don't think my team is like the best team in the draft, but I think it's easy to use because you have Miraidon clicks Electro Drift or Urshifu clicks Surging Strikes. Like Grimmsnarl sets up screens or use Thunderwave. Like pretty obvious things of like here are ways to win with my team. You look at something like Void Steam, where if you get up Trick Room and you can get Calyrex set up, then it's much easier to win. There's teams like with pretty clear win conditions, and here it's like setting up Terapagos, putting your team opponents to sleep is like, I guess, the best way to do it. Like it feels like harder to win, I guess, or harder. There's not a clear way to win, but there's lots of options on this team. So I think you can definitely win some big matchups, and I think it could be a winning team, but it's not a team that is like has a clear path to victory, I guess, or you have to fight for every win. I don't think there's gonna be any wins where it like clearly sweeps. Because something like Bastion Legion, who could have been a rain sweeper before, is now less of a rain sweeper. Just because of the increased defense of like Mons in the format. And because of like how much better the average Mon is. Um, so I think It's just gonna be interesting. I'm not gonna say too much about it. I think I'm just curious to see how it turns out. Sorry, I missed completely there. Sorry, I missed again. Um, there we go. Let's move on now to two other teams in this draft. We have a Turnham's team and TBL's team. So I don't even know what to say about a Turnham's team just because it feels like, first of all, really good, but also like a I'm sorry to keep saying this, but it feels like a lot of these mons are better in Reg H. Of like, Sylveon was a real threat in Reg H, probably a significantly less of a threat here. Armarouge and Annihilate, Dragonite, and Indeedee are all huge examples of mons that were monsters in Reg H, and now are still threats in their own right, for sure, especially Dragonite and Indeedee. But when a huge, this always happens, whenever you're going from a non-restricted format to a restricted format, um, the mons with that were more focused on bulk typically get outshined. Like Annihilate and Arcalion are two perfect examples of mons that are like, they're naturally pretty bulky. But when you compare to them to actual restricteds, especially something like Zamazenta, and Annihilate's bulk is pretty much nothing compared to Zamazenta's or to Terrapagostas or something like that. So it's not as viable, but I think there's still a lot of good mons here. I think this is definitely a good team. It's not like there's I feel like there's not options here. I feel like Chen Pao Dragonite's a great combo. Indeedee Male can shut down a lot of teams. Zamazenta especially is one of the best restricted in the whole format. I am personally not as huge of a Zamazenta fan as a lot of people are, but that's just, maybe I'm biased because I got Pokemon Sword more and played that more. But I think and because I played it when Zacian was insanely good. Um but I think just he he's a more conditional mon in the sense of you need to kind of, if you don't have an iron defense up, he's damage output is much more limited. And if you have, because he's fast, but he's not crazy fast. If you have a mon that outspeeds him and can do good damage to him, he probably gets to hit KO'd by a lot of things, and that's not fun. Mewtwo is a very interesting pick. I actually genuinely could not tell you what's good about Mewtwo. I think it's not a dig on Mewtwo. I just don't know. I know he gets Psy Strike, which is good. He has a pretty high special attack stat and speed stat, but the power creep has overshadowed him significantly, especially with the psychic type changing over time. So I think he's a good mon, but as restricted, it feels like a little more questionable. Um, Probably just the best restricted available at the time, but yeah, this is another weird team in the sense of I could see it doing well, but I could also not see it not doing well. Like, I think it realistically will do well. Maybe a playoff team. Probably upper middle of the pack or middle of the pack. I don't want to make too many predictions about teams right now. I'll talk more about that later. But I do think it's a good team. It's just also a pretty solid team in the sense of like Chen Pao is just annoying to fight. Zamazenta is always going to be like pretty good. Dragonite, if he Terras, is always pretty decent. He's worse in this format, significantly worse in this format, but it's still like a huge problem. You have Indeedee, so you have one of the three main priority stoppers, and Indeedee male, Indeedee female, and Frigoraph are probably the three main priority stoppers. And so if you have Chen Pao and Dragonite who love clicking Sucker Punch and Extreme Speed, respectively, then you don't have to deal with at least one of those guys. So, I also did note that you said he's basically a third Calyrex with Expanding Force. I didn't realize he got Expanding Force. It makes sense that he would. He definitely should have gotten it. So him with Indeedee is pretty nice. One thing I'm a little concerned about. I mean, you do have Drifloon, with Unburden, which is very nice to have speed control like that. And Dragonite also gets it. But it feels like you're not a Trick Room team. Like, your mons are pretty fast, so it's kind of hard to be a Trick Room team. Like, Sylveon is slow. I guess a Hippowdon is slow, but Hippowdon feels kind of odd. I don't like Abaddon personally, but that's just me. And DD male's the faster DD, 95 base speed, I'm pretty sure. When a DD female is significantly slower. He's 85. And like I just don't see sorry, one sec. I don't see a great way for speed control here other than like Drifloon, Dragonite maybe. Uh, so that's something to be concerned about, I would say. You have sorry, one, two, sorry, one, two, three, 4 months week to go to dark, and 4 months week to ghost as well. As well as 3 months week to ice, one of them being 4 times week. So like there's some type matchups that can be tough, but it's okay. I mean, especially with Terra, your type matchups matter usually less. The only concern I would see with this team is just support. Like you do have, I guess Chen Pao isn't really support. It does have some support and it's very fast. And DD Males definitely has some good support. Driftbloom has some good support. Armrouge has a pretty good move pool, but his speed makes him harder to use as a support, especially in this format. There's just so many ridiculously fast mons. Like Chen Pao is speed tying with 3 other huge mons, a Fluttermane, Koraidon, and Miraidon. So there's a lot more like problems. A lot of more problems in this team in the sense of like support. Like I think you should be okay, but if you get out supported by someone in the sense of like they are able to press you with their support mons and you are not able to attack them in the same way, that can be annoying. And the sense of the damage of this team is not what it used to be. Like Chen Pao getting it pretty hard, but runs Choice Band a lot just to do extra damage, to be useful in that damage sense. Zamazenta, again, if he doesn't iron defense for its body presses, it's like doing some damage, but not like crazy damage. You can have some side spam, but you need to be fast enough to use it. And if you're not running Scarf, you can probably be outsped and have a lot of damage out to you, especially if you're not as bulky. Something like Armourouge is not that bulky. So probably the biggest weaknesses would be that speed control, support, and the sometimes lack of damage. But yeah, good team overall still. I guess I'm talking about how teams will end up. So I will say that this is probably going to be an average to above average team. I think it's a good team. No matter how much I talk about a team's criticisms, I think that they're all really good teams. So it's hard to say who will do well, but I could, again, with that being said, I think this team could do well. So let's move on to TBL's team. I think I'm sorry that I keep saying every team is interesting, but I think if this is up there on the more interesting teams in the sense you have your one restricted being the Necrozma Dawnwings, which is 4 times weak to dark, but Terra exists, so it's better now. Terra Fairy specifically is mainly what it runs. Like a worse Lunala. Lunala's definitely better, but it's still pretty good. Ursaluna Frigoraph is a great combo. Scraggy's a fun one to have. I love that he's popular now, just because he's slower than things like Ursaluna, so he can be a good support option for them, and good into mons like Calyrex Ice and Iron Hands because he's slower than them. I think Porygon 2 and Primarina are both much better in Reg H. They both have potential here for sure, but not great potential. I think these tier 5 picks are like okay. You're not bringing your tier 5s no matter who you are most of the time. Hopefully, you don't need them most of the time. But like I really couldn't see these guys being used too often, especially when you have your top 4 mons weak to ice already. Having Hydrop who's 4 times weak to ice is pretty brutal. They're there are a lot of strengths to this team, I will say. In the sense of once you get Trick Room up, which is much easier to do with Vergraph blocking priority moves, and when you have things like Porygon 2, who's pretty bulky, and Tentacruel's Madon Wings, who's also somewhat bulky once you run Terra, especially, um, you're in a pretty good spot. Of like Ursaluna's a pretty good Trick Room sweeper. Brute Bonnet has Spore on Trick Room, which is not crazy slow. It's like 55 base speed, something like, yeah, 55 base speed. But it is somewhat slow. Scraggy's a good support option. Glacier I think is actually a really good mon, just because he's way cheaper than Calyrex Ice and has a somewhat similar effect. Can't snowball in the same way. You can't hit both targets as easily. Glacial Lance on Glacier would be very, very scary. But he's still a pretty good mon. And I think there are there are like problems on this. Like there are a lot of mons I don't want to be around. Like Primarina can set up and be a problem. Glacier can set up and be a problem. Ursaluna, if it's burned, it can be a problem. Skeleturge could even set up with Torch Songs and be a problem. Necrozma Dawnwings just has pretty good coverage actually. So it can be good support and offensive option. Somewhat similar to a tournament team. I could see this team being out offensed. Or sorry, not his team. Nick's team. I can see being out offensed in the sense of you have some guys that can do a lot of damage, but you also have a lot of guys who can't do a lot of damage, and that's not fun. Because your opponent can just attack you, and you can have good bulk. But if they're doing a lot more damage than you are, then it can be hard to get rid of like problems on their team. So if they have like a support mon that's just really, really annoying you, and isn't Prankster, I guess, because of Frigoraph, or if they already killed Frigoraph, or killed, let's say they kill Ursaluna, right? Then it's like, who is your main attacker left? Like you have something like Glacier or Primarina, but they're like solid at best. They're not like huge monsters. Like Ursaluna is very scary, but there aren't too many other guys on this team that are very scary. I don't think I'm scared of like Glacier. Like I'm kind of scared of Primarina. I'm kind of scared of Dawnwings. I'm kind of scared of, but no one like scares me like Ursaluna. And so if Ursaluna goes down, or if your opponent's able to outplay them with something like Misty Terrain, so no one can get burned, or skill swap away Guts, or like whatever they're able to come up with to beat Ursaluna, or if you just switch him in at a bad time and he dies, whatever, then without Ursaluna, this team is significantly weaker. Because you have a lot of support. Like Porygon 2 is a dedicated support mon, same with Scraggy, same with Frigoraph. Charisma probably not going to fill the support role too much, but he will probably run at least one support move every match just because he has a lot of options. I think it's who are you supporting is the main question. Brute Bonnet, again, is someone support mon. It has 127 base attack or something ridiculous, I believe. So that hits hard. But it's not it's not the kind of mon you bulk up too much because its defenses are not crazy. So I guess Glacier or Primarina is the next best attacker. But it's something to be consider or to be aware of. Again, your two most powerful mon, just straight up, are or three most powerful mon: Glacier, Pupana, and Ursaluna. They're all physical attackers. So special attacking is pretty common on this team as well. But it's if you could probably get away with running more defense than special defense, and like that probably won't bite you much on this team. So I'm I say this with every team, but I'm curious to see how this team does. And I'm curious to see how it's utilized. I think there's a lot of potential for creativity here, especially with Necrozma Dawnwings, who has like great coverage. Or with being able to set up like something like Skeleturge or Primarina. If you're able to set them up, or Glacier even, you're able to be a real problem. And you're able to kind of create a more difficult situation for your opponent. Frigoraph gets a lot of options as well. So catching your opponent off guard is also huge if you run Ursaluna with like Shadow Claw to hit those ghost types. That would be interesting. Or like there's the Terrago Shadow Claw that could do a lot of damage, especially with Guts. If you run What else would be interesting? Like Brute Bonnet gets Sucker Punch, obviously, but it does get some coverage. If you run like, I think it gets Rock Slide, but it gets like some coverage with that strong attack, meaning you catch your opponent off guard there. You have a lot of support mons, so what kind of support moves are they running? Like they run the typical ones, but if they run something unique as well and catch your opponent off guard, you're going to have to unfortunately catch your opponent off guard more, or you're going to have to outplay them more with this kind of team. Again, there's not as clear of a way to win, but it's still a good team. The only other pretty glaring weakness is just the fact that it's like utterly reliant on Trick Room. Um, Outside of Trick Room, you don't outspeed anything. Like, I'm pretty sure Necrozma Dawnwings is your fastest mon. Maybe Hydrapple, but I don't think so. Like, for Marina, 60 base speed, Skeletor is probably similar to that. But those are like some of the faster mons on the team. So you're kind of struggling in the speed department unless you get Trick Room up. And if you have something like you're fighting a tournament, let's say, and he uses Imprison Trick Room, then you're in a much worse spot because your damage outside of your main guys is worse. So hard. Do you have some problem matchups for sure, but I think there's a lot of potential here. Also, TBL, make sure to get your logo set up because you're the one team without a logo right now. So I'm gonna call you out and tell you to fix that. Send in your logo whenever you can. Obviously, no rush, but send that in just so we have it. And let's move on. We have a handful of teams left. Let's move on to okay. I think his team. Wow, there's a lot going with this team. I think Lunala, Roaring Moon, Indeedee, Torkoal, just those top four mons are really good. Especially when you have something like Comfey to support Lunala to get it back up to full HP, so it's able to get that what's it called? Shadow Shield up. So it takes it's like multi-scale, pretty much. If it's able to have that at full HP, that's really nice for its bulk. If you have something like Torkoal, who needs HP to use Eruption, if you want to run Specs Torkoal, which is probably in this format the best way to run it, for sure. Even in most formats, you want to run Specs on it because its attack's not that. It's not crazy. If you run Specs on it, max special attack in Sun, and you're able to heal it back up to full HP with something like Comfey, that's nice. So Comfey is actually a great mon on this team. I think that's a great pick. Roaring Moon benefits a lot from Torkoal, and Roaring Moon and Lunala both do get Tailwind. So that's part of your speed control. Lunala does get Trick Room, so if you want to run Torkoal and Trick Room, and DD obviously gets Trick Room and can run Follow Me to help set up Trick Room, then you can do that as well. Conko is a great Trick Room mon. Arcanine's a good Tailwind mon. Sandy Shocks is a good Tailwind mon and can work well with Torkoal. It's not a very typical mon, as you might know, just because it's Sandy Shocks. Like, you're never gonna see a Sandy Shocks in the game, but it has a lot of potential. I've seen it be used pretty well, especially with a Sun team. I think it has potential to be a good threat. Mousehold is interesting. I think it's really pretty fast and has a lot of support. But when it's as frail as it is, it probably needs to run Sash, meaning you're running 90% accurate population bombs, which is less reliable and not as great. But the nice thing is you still get things like Thunderwave on it, you get Encore on it, you get Super Fang on it, you get Beat Up on it. You can beat up Arcanine for justified boosts. You can Pop Bomb pretty much anything for like 50% or like a lot of damage, which is annoying. You might make your opponent run something like Rocky Helmet just so you're like on the redirection mon, just so you won't be able to attack into it, and you're changing its item just by having Mouse on your team, which is nice. I think a lot of potential with this team. Even though I did mention how you get two pretty good Tailwind mons and trick them up somewhat reliably, I think speed could be a problem with this team. Just because it's not guaranteed speed control. I think Trick Room is pretty much easier to get up on this team than Tailwind. Um, though actually no, you could get up Tailwind pretty easily with Roaring Moon. I feel like you're not taking a full advantage of the speed control. Like if you have Trick Room up, then Roaring Moon feels really out of place. If you don't have Trick Room up, Torkoal feels really out of place, and they're both just kind of sitting ducks in that opposite situation. Um, I think that excuse me. There is a lot of potential with this team. Again, especially with I like Indeedee female a lot. I like Roaring Moon a lot, and I like Lunala. I think Lunala is one of the best legendaries in the whole format. Sorry, I'm getting a little sick. But it is quite curious to see what this team will get up to. Um, that's about it with this team. I think the weakness is a little bit of just kind of awkward of like, do you want Trick Room up or do you want Tailwind up? That's a bit kind of a lingering question with this team. Um, there's a lot of actually coverage on this team, which is nice. A lot of support options. But it's another team that feels like it could just get out offensed. Like if you get rid of Torkoal or just neutralize it by like weakening it enough, and you're able to deal with Comfey, which is not too hard to deal with because you can Oko it most of the time. If NDD isn't a problem for you for whatever reason, um, if you're able to kind of manage it, then it's not too super scary. Like Torkoal's the main offensive threat, and Roaring Moon is. And outside of that, Mousel does good damage. Conkeldurr can do some pretty good damage in Trick Room. Arcanine can do some nice damage, especially with E-Speed, but you're blocking your own E-Speed with NDD, so it's hard to get like insane consistent damage off of this team. And it does have a lot of potential. I've said that a lot about this team, but I believe it. I think it does have potential to be a really good team. But it's pretty much entirely up to the piloting here. I don't know OK at all. But if he's good, he's able to use his team well, I could see it being a top team for sure. If he's not able to use his team well, which there's a lot of pitfalls with this team, then I could see him being an OK team. I mean, not no pun intended, but I can see him being like below middle of a pack. So it's really up to his piloting. I don't think it's guaranteed by any means. So on to SMB, which is a very fun team. I like a lot of the Mons on here. I think Magmar is kind of a fun support option. I would follow me. Iron Valiant I love and I was going to take, but it would be a third fighting type for me. So that's the only reason I didn't go for it. But it's a great Mon, a lot of support. It's really hard. The Rishram Zekrom duo is really funny. I think that's mainly for memes, or just because they're both funny. Zekrom feels a little worse than Rishram, but it's just neither of them are like crazy threats. They can both do like 70% to your opponent with their stab, and that's kind of it. Like they're nothing crazy on either end. Swampert and Cleavor both feel like okay. Pheasant Deputy feels like okay. Nothing knock your socks off. Rillaboom is definitely the standout star of this team, along with Iron Valiant. Lando T is interesting. He gets Intimidate, and he gets some nice options, but you're kind of afraid of clicking Earthquake here. Like you're not. He is your flying type, so you don't have any other Mon to freely click it next to. You don't have any Telepathy Mon. So you're gonna have to click Protect if you want to click Earthquake. And Lando T loves clicking Earthquake. That's kind of its big thing, or one of its big things. So that's a problem for it. Intimidate's always nice, especially with U-turn if you're running Scarf or something like that. Hisuian Zoroark, I love Zoroark, especially Hisuian. But it can feel a little lost sometimes. Thankfully, he is your only dark weakness, I believe, on this whole team, which is not super common to have one dark weakness, I guess. But very nice, nonetheless. Something I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, with Lunala is that Terra Fairy, especially with Meteor Beam, is pretty common on it to power it up. But it is a 4 times dark weakness that likes tearing away out of that weakness. Moving back, sorry, to the SMB's team, he Hisuian Zoroark just can be nice to have as that normal ghost coverage. So if you are something, well, there's nothing on this team that's weak to fighting, um, which is means you can't like bait him that way. But um, if you're able to bait your opponent into wanting to attack Hisuian Zoroark with a ghost move, let's say, or with a normal type move. Those are like kind of the two biggest immunities that it has. For like anything like Terapagos or Calyrex, you have a positive matchup in both of them, which is nice. And otherwise, it feels like this team's a little lost. Not gonna lie. I think you have a lot of good mons, a lot of potential, but if your opponent has a really good team, which there are a lot of really good teams here, if your opponent has a really good team, then it feels like you get overpowered pretty easily. Valiant and Rillaboom almost feel like musts here in the sense of like Rillaboom is a great fake out option, and Valiant is a great fast option with support. But everything else feels like you can take it or leave it, honestly. There's no one again with like talking about a team like Ursulune, like when TVL's team, you said Ursulune is kind of like the big guy you're scared of, and there's nothing crazy else. I think I could be scared of taking like solid damage from everything on this team, but I don't think there's anyone on this team I'm scared of being like hit with like a super powerful outcome of like, oh, you can't let this guy set up, you can't let like Calyrex Shadow Rider set up, like you can't let Calyrex Shadow Rider set up, but you can let all of these guys like be problems. You can kind of let them sit there, and you can take them out somewhat reliably. The bulk on this team is like above average. I think it's pretty good, but it's not like ridiculous. So it's like you can probably two hit KO me. I can maybe one hit KO you, maybe two hit KO you, but I'm faster than you most of the time, so it feels like kind of a problem. I think I did do a little bit of mocking with S&B, and that was definitely the problem. Was when I ran the just good sets. Like if I tried something weird, he was able to kind of beat me most of the time because I wasn't able to get that damage out. But if I was just running like Tailwind, or if I was running like fast Mons that hit really hard, then he was having a lot of trouble. And I think that's pretty evident when you just look at the team. A lot of Mons that are like maybe could have been scary in another format that aren't scary here. Let's move on to, we have 4 teams left, and let's move on to the next 2 teams of Montana Manganium and Charleston Clamperls. So with Montana, I think this team is probably one of the scariest in the entire draft, just because you have really, really good mons like Koraidon, Fluttermane, Ogerpon, Walking Wake. Those 4 alone are a great core. Necrozma Duskmane is a great value restricted, just because you're able to get him kind of later on than normal, for most restricted, but he's still definitely a huge threat. You can run him with Trick Room or not. This team doesn't like Trick Room too much, but you can run it for sure, as an option. Walking Wake hits crazy hard. I don't know if you guys know this, just he does. So he's very underrated mon in my opinion. Fluttermane very clearly hits very hard. Koraidon very clearly hits very hard. Ogerpon does too. It's one of those teams with a lot of special threats and physical threats, so you can't pick a defense, and that's key in draft in my opinion. If you have threats of both sides of the attack, then you can't pick a defense to invest in, meaning you're weaker to, like, you have to run HP if you're going for bulk pretty much, or you have to guess on one, or be able to beat specific mons and not the whole team, and that's annoying. I think the balance of this team is pretty good. I think the fact that it's a Sun team with some of the best Sun mons works really well, especially like Ogerpon being a redirection user, but you also get a fire type attack that's stab 100 base power, 100% accurate too. And you can Terra Fire with an attack boost and to become even stronger. When using it is like really nice. In Sun, you just do a lot of damage. Ogerpon can do ridiculous damage on this team as a support mon or as a follow me mon mainly. Walking Wake, I already mentioned, is really strong. Fluttermane's obviously really strong. Goride on Necrozma. Regieleki really fast support. Can do also some decent damage. But I see it mainly as like Electro Web, or like a Terra Blast user. Him on top, Intimidate and Fake Out is nice to have, and I believe either party shot or U-turn, probably U-turn, um, as well. I love Illumise. I picked Volbeat just because I love Illumise. I like Volbeat more than Illumise, but Illumise is still great. Prankster Weather user and Prankster Tailwind user is very nice, and he gets great options as well for its Prankster moves. Lilligant is an interesting pick, but I think it does definitely has potential too on the Sun team, because it's so good, or just because the team is so good that it can be not the top priority to take out. And if it's not the top priority to take out Lilligant, then that can be a problem. It can sleep powder you pretty easily. Clodsire is just crazy slow, and that's probably why he's on the team, just in case you're fighting a Trick Room team. You are 20 base speed. You outspeed most things in Trick Room, including Torkoal. You are literally speed tie with Torkoal, which is very nice. So I think that this team, I really could not see it missing playoffs. Honestly, I think it's a really good team. I don't know Cromp at all as well. But I can see this team getting 5-6 wins minimum probably. Couldn't see it with a losing record. Just of how good it is, and I think that there's a lot of really scary teams in this draft, but this is probably one of the scariest. So that's something in my opinion. Let's move on to Bosie's team. Bosie is a great player. He was the runner-up of last season for this division, and he has a pretty nice team. I think it was significantly different because there was a drop already. But when he took over, he made a lot of adjustments, and I think they're mostly pretty good adjustments. Picking up Urshifu's single strike is huge. He went undrafted, but having him is just a great physical threat. Kieran White is mainly a specs user, but it's just or a life orb user to power it up a little. But with that, and especially if you're in snow, which the team was originally designed kind of to be a snow team, but he kind of ditched that. I think maybe it would have been good to keep some snow. But either way, Kieran White hits really hard. Iron Bulge is extremely fast support, and can be even faster if it wants to, or hit even harder if it wants to. Icy Wind is the kind of the main thing I like it for. Encore too. But Freeze Dry is really nice to have. Hydro Pump's nice to have. You can even run Chilling Water as like a mini Intimidate if you want. King Gambit and Spectrier, I think have a lot of potential to be good, but might not be good. Hard to say kind of how he pilots them. And he's a good pilot, so he can make these Mons threatening. I think that Solgaleo has a lot of options and a lot of utility. I'm a fan of it, as well as Duskmane. I think they're both pretty good value picks. I think that Ambipom is a great tier 5, and I think that if I hadn't taken hadn't taken an Amorous, Ambipom would have for sure been my tier 5 besides Sceptile. I might have honestly taken it over Sceptile too. It's just really good. Spectrier, I already mentioned, but I think is a good budget pick as well. Dragapult is a huge budget pick. I think it is extremely fast, extremely hard, and can be annoying, especially with Band. But it's just not a fun mon to fight. And Chandler as a Flash Fire mon is kind of nice to have. You don't really need it too much on this team per se, but it's just a nice option to have. And overall, just the team is not fun to fight. I don't know how well it's going to do. I think there are some problems with the team in the sense of like a lot of like kind of repeating, not a lot of repeating typing, but there's definitely quite a bit of repeating typing, or repeating weaknesses at least. I think you have Ambipom for fake out and Iron Bundle for speed control, and then you get some support on not almost no support on Spectrier, but some support on Solgaleo as well. But otherwise, your support's pretty lackluster. Zapdos does get Tailwind, I guess, in Bundle. Obviously, it has Icy Wind. And Solgaleo gets Trick Room. Maybe Chandelure gets Trick Room. Outside of that, it feels like speed could be a problem for you. and it feels like just getting punched could hurt. Like fighting types have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 super effective mons. There are 2 ghost types, but dark types also get 1, 2, 3, 4 mons. They're good into. So I think there are problems with this team for sure. But it's a good team overall. So hard to say how poorly it does. I think it'll still be kind of a problem no matter what. And let's move on to our last 2 teams. Sorry, this is scuffed, I know. But I want to make it so you guys can actually see them instead of not being able to see them. Here you go. Here are your last 2 teams. I think that they are both unique teams, and I really, really like Charcoal's team, honestly, just because there's a lot of unique mons on here. Like Tornadus, I think is actually one of the best support mons in the whole format. Calyrex Shadow Rider, one of the best restricted in the whole format. Very scary, and you think it's easier to kill than it is. I definitely think it's easier to kill than it is. I've run into that trap a lot. Raging Bolt and Jump Bluff and Great Tusk all benefit pretty heavily from Sun, which Tornadus can run, and I feel like he is planning on running some Sun options with this team. And I think that it'll be annoying, especially with Ditto and Clefable as redirection, and Ditto just to turn into your opponent. Ditto's worse in 2 restricted formats than it is in 1 restricted formats because there's obviously more legendaries, so turning into a legendary matters a little less. But it's still a good mon, especially in draft, just because it's usually cheaper than it should be. Here it's tier 2, which is not exactly cheaper than it should be. But it's still usually restricted for the price of, or a tier 1 for the price of a tier 2. So I think it can be good. Clefable is really nice to have on this team because you couldn't have Calyrex, Tornadus, Raging Bolt, Ditto, and Clefairy. So you took Clefable, who's a worse option, but it still fills a very similar role. It's like the exact same role as Clefairy, except slightly more coverage, I think, and worse defenses. So that's fine. Great Tusk is a pretty good value mon in terms of its attack, and I love Jump Bluff, honestly. I think being able to set up its own Sunny Day is kind of nice. The fact that you have Tailwind that it can set up is nice. It can run things like Leaf Storm, and you can run Sleep Powder on it, which is the main annoyance of it. Paldean and Taurus Aqua, I like the typing additions of Water and Fighting to this team, and I think having an Intimidate on is huge. Or just Intimidate is pretty good in a format with restrictions like this, and having a Intimidate user is nice. Or an Intimidate user. Alolan Muck feels like just a troll pick, honestly. But maybe it is to pair with something like Jump Bluff so it's way faster, or to pair with Intimidate, or I don't know exactly what he's going for. Maybe Prankster with Tornadus, I think is probably the most realistic option. But curious to see how he uses that, if he uses it at all. Calyrex is 100% going to be the MVP of this team. I could see Raging Bolt doing well. Entei, Asmon I've not mentioned yet, but I think it's just because it's conditional. Like the 50% chance to burn on Sacred Fire is really nice, but it's if you don't get it, it's not as good of a move, obviously. And it's powerful in Sun, but it feels more conditional. I think that it's a good team for sure. I think I couldn't see this team doing super poorly, just because it feels powerful. But the only thing to be concerned about is that if you benefit a lot from Sun and you're fighting Sun teams, you do get like some of the benefit of the Sun because you have to set it up, and setting it up is a slight problem for you. But they're gonna have, like, you want Sun up a little, and they really want it up, and them relying on it more is the problem. So I think you're going to be a less significant threat, or like you're going to did some scammer pop off? Yeah, so sorry, there's Somebody just popped into the chat. Let me 1 sec. Let me ban this. Ignore the spam bot here. Ban him. All right. Sorry. Anyways, I think this team is pretty good. A lot of potential. With the usage of this team, Tornadus especially and Ditto especially. But just good mons and a good team. Let's move on to our final team. We have the Amazing Monkey Dories, and I know nothing about AMLO Dude, but he's an interesting guy. Based on just his picks. I think that he there's honestly a lot of directions he could go with like the mons on this team. Ho and Dialga being his, I believe his first 2 picks were interesting. There are already a lot of good restricteds gone by then, but still Ho is very good just because of Regenerator, which is nice to have. And mainly just like Tailwind Burning and like the typing is or not, I guess the typing, but there's a lot of things you can do with it. Dialga Origin is kind of unique, especially because there were probably I think better restricted available, but Dialga Origin is still a really good restricted, so don't get me wrong. Landorus Incarnate is pretty good as well as a tier 1, and Smeargle is a great tier 2. So I think the Smeargle Gothitail Klefki Screamtail combo is just really annoying to fight, especially if they aren't in Tailwind already because of Landorus. So it's not going to be a fun time. Not going to be a matchup I want to fight, especially with something like Palafin, who is not immediately that threatening or was threatening in earlier formats, and it's still like it could be a problem, right? Problem with this team I could see is the damage output, honestly. But he has kind of insane support, so it's pretty hard to counter all of the options he has. I think get a manual switching out. That would be pretty nice to deal with that. Perish Song. Otherwise, just again out damaging him. And since he is playing kind of more weirdly or like not playing kind of the typical team, if you're able to just overpower him with normal mons and just kill his whole team. Like I know he does run protect, but like Urshifu specifically, especially Urshifu single, but like just Urshifu against this team is nice, especially Terra Urshifu. He's nice. Iron Boulder, who I have, could be nice against this team. Specifically because Ho-Oh is weak to it and it bypasses protect. Taunt, you're gonna probably run into the issue with this team of only having 1 mental herb, and you have a lot of mons who want to run it. Klefki, Screamtail, Gothitail, and Smeargle are pretty much all dedicated support mons, and they all want to run mental herb in draft specifically, where you know you're getting talented a lot. But only one of them can run it, so a lot of switching probably going to go on with this team, especially with Palafin. And I think it's an interesting team. I couldn't say exactly what the specific strategy is besides like Parastrap. But it feels like I don't know. I don't know if the cohesion on this team is as strong as some teams, but it's a good team nonetheless. Overall, with this draft, I think the moral of the story is that there's just a lot of scary teams and there's a lot of things to look out for, and to be over prepared rather than under prepared in the sense of like don't underestimate any team. And a lot of teams like running weird things, so keep that in mind. I really a lot of new people in this league, but even if I knew everyone, it would still be hard to predict how the league will go. I think there is almost no doubt in my mind that we're going to have a good season in the sense of like we're gonna have a lot of close fights, a lot of game threes, a lot of like kind of up and down, a very tight kind of league. I don't think we'll have like people dominating or people like suffering. Like I think we'll probably generally be closer towards the middle of the pack for everyone. Um, so it'll be fun to see how playoffs turn out. But that kind of wraps up the stream. Thank you for watching. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't make too many predictions about how the league's going to turn out, but that's just because it could go in a million ways. So, looking forward to seeing how it does end up turning out. Looking forward to seeing the Las Vegas Marauders win, obviously. Just kidding. Um, but yeah, here is one final look at um, some of these teams. If you want to take a look at all of them, here you go. So, with that being said, I hope you all enjoy. Have a good night. And thank you for watching.